Hi. I'm working on this new web series about queer sex ed, and I think that there's something you can help me out with.
This is my sex ed horror story. We had a pretty terrible experience where in our PE class technically, they split up the boys and girls and said this is the self-defense unit. And we all kind of knew that was code for anti-rape unit. We had to watch videos, run drills, meet with police officers to talk about basically how to avoid getting raped. And how we were responsible for our behaviors and our actions that could lead to us getting raped. We kind of assumed that the boys were getting the, okay, don't rape women, that's a bad thing to do. But actually, we could hear through the dividing wall them playing basketball and laughing and, just playing around. They basically got a free basketball period while we were doing self-defense drills to practice not getting raped.
So my sex ed horror story happened when I was 13 years old. I was in 8th grade and I went to a small Christian private school. So every single year we had some complete stranger from, I think it was CareNet, come in and, teach us everything that we needed to know. So the first thing that she did in 8th grade was she handed out these little pamphlets to every person in the class about STIs. And a symptom of every single one was death. Every single one. But the main horror story from that class was that she had about 8 volunteers come up to the front of the room and stand in a line. And I was one of the people in the line. And she had each of us take an Oreo cookie and chew it up in our mouths, but she was like, don't swallow it. And then she handed a cup to the person in the front of the line. And she told that person, spit the Oreo cookie out into the cup and pass it down. So spit out the cookie, pass it, spit cookie, pass it, and so on till it reaches the last person in the line. And she looks this 13-year-old precious little child in the eyes and she says, drink it. And we stopped her at the last second and she looks at all of us and she's like, that's what sex is like.
Wow.
I know, right?
I'd say that I can't believe it, but I went to high school, so.
What was your sex ed experience like?
We did sex ed for one semester in 10th grade once a week, which really just meant vaguely skirting around talking about healthy communication, going over a couple STIs, and a mention thrown in there that, oh yeah, sometimes people are gay too. Oh, and a condom demonstration that didn't even have a penis model. What about you? What was your sex ed experience like?
Weird. I was homeschooled from 2nd grade on, so one day my mom gave me a book and told me to ask her if I had any questions, which of course I did not do because she was my mom and I was 11.
Fun. You ever think about how just about everybody has a sex ed horror story? It's not just because sex is awkward, it's because the way sex education is taught is kind of, well, horrific.
Well, luckily, we're here to change that.
It's the show called Sex Ed Queries, where we learn queer inclusive sex ed. Yay!
Hey everybody, I'm Drew.
And I'm Allison.
And we're Sex Ed Queries.
With the help of Sojourn, a queer Jewish nonprofit in Atlanta, we're here to provide accessible and inclusive sex education for anyone and everyone who needs it.
We'd be spending our time wandering around the rainbow equivalent of a black hole where we came from, but unfortunately, the American education system isn't going to do much to help us out.
True. Did you know that only 24 states and DC mandate any kind of sex education?
And only 17 of those states require that the information they teach is medically accurate.
And not to say correlation implies causation, but I don't think it's a coincidence that young people ages 15 to 24 are responsible for over half of new STI cases every year, even though they only represent a quarter of the sexually active population.
And those are just the stats for straight cis people. The CDC did a study of 46 states in 2016, and out of those, only 15 states could report that the majority of their schools required topics related to the LGBTQ+ community to be taught in their sex ed classes.
And those numbers have real consequences. Believe it or not, LGBTQ+ teens are more likely to get pregnant or get someone else pregnant than straight ones. They're also way more likely to experience relationship violence.
So, a while back, Sojourn decided that these numbers need to change. So they got a bunch of smart people together to make their dream for real queer sex ed a reality, and we're what's left over.
Now, don't get us wrong. We're passionate about this topic, but we're not educators. My master's is in public administration, and Drew's studying to be a playwright.
Guilty as charged. I'm a theater gay.
So we're gonna make sure that it's not only our voices that are getting heard. Every 4 weeks, we're putting out a video like this, where we break down the nuts and bolts of the topic we're gonna be discussing for that month. We cite as many sources as possible, and we're gonna be defining our terms in the description, so please hold us accountable. And next week, we're going to bring in an expert for a live interview. So that way you're getting the information that the professionals deem most important for you to know.
Week after that, we're gonna have a video from the two of the amazing women behind Sex Ed Queries, Rebecca Staple-Wax and Mackenzie Wren. They've both got some amazing knowledge and are gonna be able to talk about everything from their personal experience to advice for parents about engaging with this kind of material.
And then we're gonna take a week off.
Cause even God had to rest after creating the world.
Speaking of, Sojourn is a Jewish organization, but we know a lot of people tuning in aren't gonna be Jewish. And we're not gonna force anything on you that you don't believe in.
Even Allison and I engage in our Judaism in different ways. When it comes up on the show, it's going to be in a way that's accessible to everybody watching.
So we're gonna use Musar. Musar is an ancient spiritual practice. It's based on a set of soul traits that we all have and use in different ways. So Musar says that each person internally has a balance of these innate soul traits. And the goal of life is to get a better balance or become the person that you wanna be through that balance. These soul traits are things like patience, trust, gratitude, loving kindness.
So, completely irrelevant to sex ed, right?
When they are relevant to the topic at hand, we might be bringing in a Musar soul trait or two.
Nobody's gonna ask you to believe in God or start learning Hebrew. We're just asking you to trust us that we're doing all of this in good faith.
Pun intended.
Well, I wrote the script last week, so...
Make sure y'all tune in next week for an interview with Miss Wren about her experiences teaching sex ed when she worked for Planned Parenthood.
We know times are tough and the world is crazy, but the need for this information isn't going anywhere. You don't study an entire semester's worth of information the night before the test.
True, that's what everybody does.
Okay, me being a stuffy nerd aside, even if social distancing is preventing us from having sex, this is the kind of information we're going to need for the rest of our lives. So don't wait until the last minute to learn how to be safe.
If you want to support us, do the whole YouTube spiel. Like, comment, subscribe. And make sure you spread the word about Sex Ed Queries so we can get our information out far and wide.
Until next time, stay safe, stay sexy, and see you next week.
Bye.